for about the next hour or so. And I am going to just take a look at the chat room. I see some things have already dropped in there, which is really cool.
Nice.
Just as a by way of introduction for anyone I haven't met yet, my name is Matthew Ferrara, and I've spent about 30 years in professional development and real estate, and I've been working a lot with your company lately, and it is lots of fun. You guys are just so excited about learning and creativity that it's for me a pleasure to constantly come up with more contributions. And today we're going to talk a little bit about growing our relationships, strengthening our relationships at times like this. And so I'm going to teach you a few things that I've learned over the years from my mentor. And as you can see from just the start of our session, I love these to be interactive. So please jump into the chat room at any time. Please, ask questions or wave at me if I don't see you in the video screen and you have a question, so that we can make this as engaging as possible, not just a lecture, certainly not an early in the morning lecture. Love to see some of the good news that's already in the chat room. So some things that we always have to remind ourselves every morning, that even when things seem a little challenging, a little bit unnormal, plenty of good stuff is happening all around us. So I try to do that every morning as a little personal exercise, and I've added it to my class sessions because I think it helps us all reset our brains and get ready for a good day. And as I think you've heard the proverb before, it's not really what happens to us, but it's how we react to what happens to us that makes so much of the difference. And it's important for us personally, but it's also important for our customers and our clients. It's hard to build relationships if your mind is in the wrong spot every single morning, if you don't have as much positivity as you can. So try doing a little one good thing. And by the way, that's just my first trick for you, which is when you do start a phone call, when you do start an email, when you do start, a conversation of any kind, text messaging, etc., try to get people you are in relationship with to kick off with something good that's happened to them lately. So I know we always start with, hope all is well, but maybe we can shift that question a little bit. So how are things going? What's been happening in the last week? Get them to maybe recognize that they too are having a much better week than they might have thought otherwise, or a much better day than they might have thought otherwise. And what's kind of nice, an ancillary benefit, is they associate that good feeling with you talking to them, showing up with them, and being in their lives. So while this is a good way to kick off our session, it's also just a good little trick to be able to start conversations off in the right direction. All right. So always inspiring relationships. Today, I want to talk to you about just 3 or 4 techniques that have worked. And, I really want to focus on the concept of relationships and not necessarily the concept of marketing in business. Will this help us in our business? Of course. Will this help us in our marketing? Certainly. But I really want to focus first on the mentality, a relationship first mentality that I think serves us well in our lives. And from that position, sort of like the law of attraction, it will bring to us the right relationships for the right reasons. That helps us do the right work. And it helps us also in many ways enjoy our careers. And in the times when things get a little bumpy, we recognize that it's okay for us to be part of those moments, because we're doing it for really the right reasons, and that is the other person on the other end. Nobody woke up this morning to say, oh, I just can't wait to fill out my deal spreadsheet. I instead woke up and said, I can't wait to do some good work for people that I care about. And if they're new, people I'll be adding to my life forever. So when you think about what we do in this business, what's so neat about this business, I think, is that all of our clients ultimately become friends. They ultimately become people who are in our lives for a long time. And it's a little different than other businesses, if you will. It's not just transactional if you do it right, I think. And so that's all about building good relationships. So let's start with a little game for fun. If you go to your chat room and come up with the answer to this. I've been doing this for 30 years now. And I hear this all the time. I hear people who say to me, Matt, I got into real estate because, and then they answer it. And I just want to kind of do some fun around this for a second. What do you answer? What's your answer for why you got into this really amazing business? And there's lots of possibilities. It's not that there's a right or a wrong one so much. I just want to kind of get an idea of what's in our minds, what's on the top of it. So Martha says, I got into this because I like helping people find their next home. Sarah says, I love to work with numbers and also people. I needed an option that offered both. Okay, that's cool. There you go. What other reasons did you get into this crazy business we all love called real estate? Okay, we're gonna flip some homes, says Pam, and I love the flexible schedule, says Sarah. And Trish says, I like people. Maybe put a little star next to that. I have a feeling that answer might come back to us, right? It wasn't a doctor or a professor. Oh, well, there you go. All right, that's cool. I could create my own schedule. I'm a people person. I like to be in the happy business. All right, fun. And I can control my income. And I'm sure there's lots of other answers. But the first thing I always do is when I think about building relationships, I start with that answer, right? Why am I here today? Why, what would get me out of bed? And not just get me out of bed. How do I beat the clock? How do I jump out of bed eager, ready to go? Because in this business, if you're not building relationships, it doesn't matter. Like what housing inventory doesn't matter. Whether there's a lot of houses for sale or no houses for sale won't matter unless you have a good sphere of influence that's interested in buying and selling houses. Houses don't sell themselves. They don't buy themselves. So in a lot of ways, we really have to connect with our why and use that as the fuel for then approaching and growing relationships. So having said all of that, I thought it would be funny to list some reasons that probably nobody says because it gives us a little contrarian perspective here. So when I think about, I got into real estate because nobody says it's because they can't wait to jump out of bed and do a CMA, or they love to drive people around town, or they think that 2 sinks in a bathroom are vital to the future of our country, right? All the silly things that happen in our business. Nobody says that. Although I did love the answer about I love math. So bravo. Someone caught me at my own little funny game here, right? I love doing a little math and I love people. Frankly, I'm not a math person. So I put in, who loves to calculate net proceeds? Well, truth be told, some of us do. So that's cool. But the real deep reasons, and if we think back to that answer in the chat room, is because those things lead to good changes in the lives of the people that we work with. So I think that's the core answer we want to remind ourselves of. When I was in Japan last year, and that's why I've got some pictures of my trip from Japan as our background today, I was able to talk to this chef for just a couple of minutes, and he graciously agreed to let me sort of photograph him. And, I asked him, what keeps him cooking all day long, 15, 18-hour shifts. And, what does he love about his profession? And he said, look, I like the challenge, and, I like to be able to run my own business. But one of the things he said is, I love the smile on people's face when they eat the food that I have prepared. And that really is the heart of what we do in this business, right? The number one answer for why I'm in real estate is I like people. And it's not cliche. That's the funny thing. I know that sometimes we think about these phrases, we say, oh, that's cliche. But honestly, there's a lot of different ways we could spend our lives and our careers. And not that other careers don't like people, but I think it's important to really understand what drives us in a business where we wake up every day with a lot of work in front of us, and we wake up every day with a lot of potential to do a lot of good. And I think it's critical to put the emphasis on our why. And from that, find this energy, find this opportunity, find this real driving for the relationship building that takes a long time, that takes a lot of energy, that takes a lot of commitment. And let's be honest, right? I mean, how many of us start relationships with people where really the only chance of the business end of it is contingent, right? It's very contingent. We work with people who, we hope we could do a good job for, and we hope that we'll generate some business out of, but we actually do a lot of investing up front. So we have to have a powerful why to be relationship focused. And at a time like this, where people need a little more of us, they actually might be demanding a little more of us than ever before. We have to make sure that our battery is full in that case. And so I like people is one of the number one reasons I build relationships. And so now the question becomes, well, how do we like them, right? Let's count the ways. How is it that we like to build relationships with people? What are the mechanisms, the avenues, the ways in which we grow our sphere of influence and contribute, strengthen those relationships? Maybe drop an idea or two in the chat room again as you think about like, okay, well, sure, I like people, but am I really focused on that aspect of it? Or sometimes, did I get pulled down into the whirlwind of just the mechanics of the business, the mechanics of prospecting or advertising or whatever those things are? So let's take a look at some answers as they roll in here. Ali says, well, through my honesty and my integrity, which is great. Sarah says, I asked them what their why is, right? Why is finding a new home or selling their home important, or overcoming, dealing with difficult people, right? All right, good. Thank you, Renee. What other reasons, what other ways do we show that we like people? All right, sharing my knowledge with them. Excellent, Linda. Thanks for that. And taking an authentic interest in them as individuals. Okay, now I think we're getting a little bit deeper in examining how we really like people in our sphere and how we truly build and sustain those relationships. Being a good listener also, says Lisa. All right, so these are all good answers. And what I would often do is, as I look back on how I've built my career, is I would always sit back and say, am I really focused on the right things? If it is true that I want to jump out of bed and share my knowledge with them, listen to their needs, be nice, be positive, as Michelle says, show that we care, am I actually going about that in the right way? Am I actually having the right conversations? Am I expressing the right things when I spend time with them? And frankly, when they see my name, I mean, it seems kind of quaint in a lot of ways now. When they see my name on caller ID, when they see my name in their email, when they see my name on their social media feed, do they think, I can't wait to talk to that person? I get all of these positive things. They listen to me, they're nice to me, they're positive, they're upbeat, all the things you've put in the chat room. So, okay, I think that if that is what we're after, we've got to give ourselves some extra tools for making that happen. So one question I would love to ask you all is this: what if you already had enough? In other words, let's pretend that whatever you weren't necessarily only driven by financial needs or only driven by business purposes, but you still had the ability to offer all the things that you mentioned in this last question, right? Being interested in people, listening, caring, upbeat, positive. What if you already had enough? How would you share that with others? This is another salesperson actually in the Tokyo fish markets that I talked to, and he was really cool because while I talked to him and photographed him last year, he actually sold out like 2 cases of his fish, like within the 30 minutes that I was there. He sold it, filled it again, sold it again. And it was so neat to see how he did that, because people are just walking by. That people are just, basically not stopping and looking at all his inventory. And, he clearly had enough to offer people, but how was he going to get them to stop? So what if we had, enough business for today? What if we had enough business for this month? What if we had satisfied all of our business requirements? Would we still be going about building these relationships and contributing to them? How would that happen? How would you go about it? Well, for me, the answer to this was pretty important discovery. And I came up with a little phrase that I thought might be helpful to you. I think about why I prospect, and, I prospect every day. Even now, 30 years of my career, I still reach out to people in my business, and I do it not just because I need to fill my wallet, if you will, right? I do it because I wake up every day and say, I truly believe that I am one of the best people to help fill their bucket. I truly think that they're better off with me. They're better off with a few minutes of time from me, or they're better off with me being able to be a participant in whatever journey that they're on. So when I think about what really drives me, it's not only what I'll get out of prospecting, what I'll get out of relationship business. It's that in many ways, I honestly believe I'm the best person to be able to solve problems for my clients, to be able to contribute to the journey that they're on. So when, Michelle says that's when you challenge yourself to more, I think that that's really a good catch there. It's a really good perspective. We challenge ourselves to go beyond just satisfying a particular goal with our relationships. We do it because this is our time. We're in the right place for them in their lives, and we're able to be very joyous, very exciting about doing the work. And to me, that's kind of funny when I think about prospecting, and when I think about what a lot of people kind of struggle with around prospecting. Raise your hand if you absolutely love to prospect. Be honest. Raise your hand if you absolutely love to prospect. I don't know. I got 49 little boxes on my screen right now. I don't see any hands going up. What I discovered is that when I was able to increase my love of prospecting, I really did something magical. I stopped talking as a prospector. I stopped calling and doing the sort of prospecting that we often hear about in real estate. Get them into a conversation, discover their needs, analyze their needs, and make an offer that they can't refuse, type of thing. Instead, I prospected in a different way, which is saying, hey, they might just need me in their life today in some way. And if I truly believe that I'm doing the right work, okay, I'll get paid at the same time or at some time in the relationship. And that's where, like Barbara says, be a resource for established relationship. Don't just show up according to the clock. And in this business, it's kind of funny because we talk a lot about those things. Well, every 9.8 years, someone moves. So we have to make sure we stay in contact with them. I don't think like that. I don't think like, oh, you know what? I haven't done a seminar for that client in 6.4 months. It's time for them to pop up on my reminder list or whatever. I try to make it a purpose to be constantly in flow with them. And flow, I think, is a good term. Now, let me just say this. And I'm going to teach you now two or three techniques, but I like to always start with the proof, the end in mind, if you will. Does it actually work? Like, can you actually build relationships from this good place that we're all talking about and then do business at the same time? Well, I thought it would just be fun to show you a response to my newsletter because this isn't a marketing class, but this newsletter sticks in my mind from April of this year because I don't know how many of you send out like an e-newsletter or a blog or, something out to your clients on a regular basis. Maybe they reply saying thank you or I appreciate that, etc. I don't know how many of us get responses that say, I miss you so much. This is awesome. Now, with all due respect, I really love this person, but I hadn't actually talked to them in a while. I wasn't actually being as good of a relationship with them as I could. But when you think about why you write your blog and what you're writing about or how you open a conversation or what your newsletter has in it or what you're posting on Facebook, imagine if your goal was to get people to say, I don't know, I miss you, as opposed to just thank you, or that makes me more financially smart, more savvy. I appreciate you preparing me for my tax season or something. And that really, I keep this image handy because whenever I sit down and say to myself, if I'll ask people for a few minutes of their time, I'm hoping that it will be for that kind of reaction. So how do I do that? What's the mechanism that I learned and how can you do it too? Well, if people really want our presence and not just our presence, we can be intentional by recognizing that there are just a few things in relationship that make a massive difference in the longevity and the moments that we have with them. And here they are. These are the four things. These are what we call the 4+1 ways to fill people's buckets. The 4+1 things that all relationships need. And, once I learned this, it's almost as if I can't stop talking about it. I learned this about 6 or 7 years ago from a really great friend of mine who's also a social psychologist. And he said, listen, Matt, if you boil it all down to what good relationships need, whether it's with you and your friends, you and your family, you and your significant other, you and your clients, there's really only a few buckets that need to be filled. And if you're thinking about, well, how do I strengthen my relationships now? Then think about these 4+1 buckets. Okay, here's the first bucket. The first bucket is simply this. How do we make people feel important? How do we make people truly feel as if they're significant to the relationship? And when I sit down and think about picking up the phone or writing an email or whatever it is I'm doing to stay connected to people, I challenge myself to say, in what way will I communicate to them in this time together that they really matter to us? Now, you don't have to actually be very literal with this. You don't have to say like, you're important to me. It could be the enthusiasm you show up with. It could be the fact that you try to think ahead about what the conversation should entail. It could be very subtle, but powerful ways in which you communicate to people that they matter to you. And I think the term matter is really critical at this point in terms of how people stay connected to each other. Because if you don't feel like you matter into just to a business, for example, you have very low loyalty to them. Think about a business that doesn't make you feel as if you matter to them, right? And think about how quickly you would change your loyalty to them. So if you don't feel like you matter to your airline, then you just shop on price. If you don't think you feel you matter to, I don't know, we could think of companies that don't really make us feel as if we're strongly connected to them. One of the favorites that usually comes up in conversation is like our cable company, right? How much of our cable company's little problems could be solved if they just better communicated that they matter? And by the way, that doesn't mean putting the recording on the technical support line that says, your call matters to us. It means acting in a way that truly demonstrates that we matter to them. So I think that if we say to ourselves, hey, how am I helping people realize that they matter to us? We're really starting in a different way to strengthen relationships. How do you do it? How do you make people feel like they matter to you? Maybe you want to unmute your mic and share that with us, or if you prefer to type it in the chat box, you can do that as well. But I'm just curious, because you're all really successful relationship builders. What are some of the ways, subtle ways, as well as obvious ways, you communicate to others that they matter? Anybody want to share something? All right, let's take a look. So we remember something personal about them. All right, absolutely, right? So we think about them beyond their business profile. Oh, they've been in the house this long, and they moved up, and now they might move lateral, etc. Love that. Good. Return phone calls promptly. I was hoping someone would say something like that. Thank you, Diane. Showing up on time, respecting their time, respecting their commitments that you make to them. So remembering details about them personally, just saying hi, listening better, recognizing pivotal moments. Absolutely. I think those two are great, though. I would definitely stress being timely, respecting their time, and knowing something personal about them. I've met many, many people over the years who just blow me away when they remember the name of my wife, the name of my pet, the last trip that I went on that was just significant to me. That really shows me this sort of attention goes beyond having access to my LinkedIn profile or something like that. Really means they're not treating me as something in their database. They're treating me as something in their lives. So good job. Love that one. All right. Now, the second thing that we focus on when we want to fill people's buckets, is to give them a sense of pride or esteem in our relationship. I mean, how cool is it when people become advocates for us, right? We always ask for referrals in this business. And when we get them, it just feels so good because it validates how much we put into that relationship. But at the same time, it has to work the other way around. We have to be able to express to people how proud we are to have them in our relationship. In my business, it's how I talk about the people I get a chance to share and learn and work with, right? When people say to me, well, what kind of companies do you work with? I'm super enthusiastic about the companies I work with because I'm proud of not just the work that I do, but I'm proud of them, that they're in my life. And when they get to hear that, and they hear it all the time, people say to me, oh, so-and-so called me and asked about the work you do with them. And they said, you sounded, really positive about it. So, well, I'm really proud to have a chance to contribute to my clients. I don't pick every client. I don't accept every offer, every gig that is that comes across my email. I want to pick the ones that I'm proud of and that they will be proud to be in relationship with me too. So think about esteem. It's really a positive way in which people can um, be motivated to not just, take our call and connect with us, but to tell others about us as well. So it's how well we make them have pride of our relationship. Now, the third thing that I think is critical is that when people consider their relationship with us, they are going to ask themselves one simple question, often enough, am I better off with this person than without them? That's really the key to this concept of certainty. Now, just to clarify, certainty doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you have to know the answer to everything, that you're omniscient, that you can outfox every deal or win every challenge. Obviously we got to perform in our business. I get that. But more broadly speaking, people want to feel certain that you're the right person amongst many to have in their lives, that they're better off having you there than not having you there. And that even in between the times they need your professional knowledge and skills, they're going to be, obviously proud from the previous criteria, but they're also going to be comforted by the fact and reassured, that was the word I was looking for, by the fact that having you in their lives is a positive thing. Now, there's lots of ways to communicate to others and strengthen their belief that they're better off with us than without us. And some of it are the things that we've already talked about, sharing our knowledge and maybe talking about the ways in which we have recently performed, like our sales performance or things that we've done in the marketplace. But there are other ways in which we help people feel reassured, if you will, that they're in a good relationship, that they're that relationship is a positive to their lives. What can you think of in terms of certainty? How do you reassure others that they're better off with you than without you? Any thoughts? And again, you can use a chat room, or if you just prefer to just unmute your mic, we can also just talk, whatever you're most comfortable with. And I'm trying to keep an eye on if anyone has raised their hand to move their mic, but otherwise just go for it. Just feel free to unmute yourself. How do you make others feel certain and reassured they're better off with you than without you? Okay, Sarah says, I remain supportive and I share my knowledge. Absolutely, yeah. I stay regularly connected to them. Yeah, so it's more than just the sort of mandatory check-ins, if you want to use that crazy term, but I regularly in flow. I'm a good listener. Consistency, yeah. I honor my commitments, says Drew. Love that. Continued conversation, says Linda. Sarah says, I allow them to feel needed as well. Okay, love that. Megan says, prompt attention, asking good questions in their best interest. All of these are really, really good. And I think they're definitely going to reassure and strengthen people's sense of certainty with us. Let me give you one more that I like to do. I like to make sure that I use a lot of stories when I talk to people, that they have a sense of sort of the full picture of me. So how else does this person act in their lives that make me sure I want them in my life? Now, we do this very, very simply. Sometimes we express to others how we have contributed to the local community through philanthropy, volunteerism, members of our church, whatever those things are. But sometimes it's just stories of other ways that you make a difference. So I like to tell, like, for example, little stories of where photographs come from. That when I show photographs, or maybe in my next communication, when I'm listening to someone, I can say, that reminds me of. And then I can gently connect that to another time and another place where I was helpful to someone who is just like the person I'm trying to strengthen the relationship with. Now, this is a little bit different, my friends, than simply listing all of our accomplishments. So by the way, total side note, we should be very proud of everything we've done, the deals that we've done, the people that we've helped, the changes that we've helped them create in their lives. But it's a different approach than just saying last year I did X units, X dollars. I was number one on this block and a blue moon on the third Thursday of the fourth month of the year. You know, that's not really giving people the same certainty that we know what we're doing as telling a little story that connects to the questions or commitments or attention that they have, right? So if we do hear, well, I'm not sure if now is the best time for us to do X or Y, I like to use stories to reassure. And here's why. When people feel as if they're kind of like the other people in our lives that have had a positive outcome, that increases their certainty that they're better off with us than without us. So sometimes it's not facts, but just a little anecdote that will help people. And when I think about the different ways in which a 5 or 10 sentence story can outperform a spreadsheet or a resume, I think about the fact that, well, now I have 2 sets of methods as opposed to just one to reassure people that they're connected to the right person. Let's see what's in the chat room here. Some good things. David says, make sure they know I strive to be exact. Okay, and tell them when I can't be, sure. And it would be great to have a story about how that exactingness made a difference, saved the day, caused something cool to happen that was unexpected for someone just like the person that we're talking with or who might be reading your newsletter, right? And Renee says, I tell stories all the time, but wasn't doing it purposefully. Yes. Well, it's great that it was working and probably, purposefully. I don't want you to think about it so much as like, oh, which story in my toolbox will I take out and use for the purpose of certainty, if you will. But you probably had an intuitive feel for connecting the dots between a previous experience with someone else and someone you were talking to. So love that. Good stuff. Stories are just, stories are so powerful because how we live our lives. All right, number 4, let's get that one in here. Make sure we get that one. A sense of control. Now, I want to be careful with this because sometimes people misunderstand what we mean by giving others a sense of control. Now, on one hand, it means, yeah, they have to have control over the transaction. They have to have control over, what we're doing for them. But what I mean by this is a little bit more nuanced. I mean that good relationship building, helping people stay in flow with us, really comes from giving them a sense of autonomy. And what we mean by autonomy is that our relationship is something that's happening together with them. It's not happening to them, it's happening with them. And that's very, very nuanced. But when people feel as if the actions that we take and the reasons we're connected to them and the ways in which we bring them value are really in a synergy as opposed to simply a leverage, then I think that they feel more deeply connected to us in ways that are different than the typical conversations they might have with others. Now, a good example of this has really come I think in the last few years in the real estate industry, between the difference between organizations that I consider them organic organizations versus transactional organizations. There's a lot of people out there who only want to talk about how cheaply they could do it, or how many units they do, or how discounted they can do things. And I know that when you feel those things in other transactions in your lives, who loves the absolutely cheapest seat on the plane? Who loves the absolutely cheapest hotel room in the hotel? We feel as if in that case, it's not only that we weren't in control of what was going to happen to us, but that something was really happening to us as opposed to happening with us. Have you ever, for example, been surprised by a product where you say I feel as if they really tricked me at that moment? That's when a relationship is happening to us, as opposed to, I feel as if they really thought ahead and made a little difference. Let me tell you a super simple example. This is what I call the $2 example. How many of you have stayed in a hotel before where you've had to pay for the water, had to pay for the water bottles, right? Now, that seems so little. It seems so silly to me that no one thought that out and said, listen, this is a $2 opportunity to feel as if we're in the same mindset as our customer. right? That the relationship is happening with them, not to them. If the $2 is required of the money, of the water, then it's because what's happening is a transaction is happening to the customer. If the water is there with our compliments, then it's because we're thinking, what does our client need when they have come off the road, traveled by plane and taxi and traffic and come to the hotel? Wouldn't they just like a refreshing bottle of water? And we'll find the $2 in the budget, obviously. But when I think about these little moments, it's truly because they contribute to the sense of autonomy, the sense of symbiotic relationship with others, not just hey, I'm sending you a mandatory message because it's time to turn the clocks back, or it's time to, whatever, change the batteries in the smoke detectors. Those kinds of messages to me, I always scratch my head. I say as if like, wow, do they not know that I don't have a clock that needs to be turned forward and back anymore? Like, do they not know that by now? And it sounds very silly, but it's one of those things where I feel as if, they're not in flow with me. They're doing something to me. They're just checking off the boxes in the relationship management. They're not really thinking about what matters. All right. So the last one now, because I said it was 4+1, is the one where I think we have an opportunity to spark real growth in our relationship. So we make people feel significant. We make sure they're proud to be friends with us and connected to us. They constantly reassure themselves that they're better off with us than without us, and we're in flow together. But I think the last one is the one that brings it all together. It's like the magic part in relationships. And it is the +1, where we express our belief in others' ability to grow. One of the things that we always remind ourselves of is that in every interaction with people, we're giving off signals as to what we believe about them, right? And while the other 4 things we talked about can be signaled intentionally or subtly, when we think about others who need our help, especially in the real estate aspect of their lives, but understanding that the real estate aspect is only a precursor to something bigger that's happening in their life, then we have a very powerful opportunity to forge, it's the holy grail of relationships, customers for life. How do you create customers for life? Well, it's because you encourage and you support their ability to grow their lives. So here's a little phrase I like to use. I probably have said it to you in previous sessions we've done, but I would just jot it down again for this particular item, which is real estate happens at the corner of life and change. Right? That's where real estate happens. I don't know if you've ever heard me say that before, but real estate happens at the corner of life and change. Why do people buy and sell homes? It's not because of interest rates. It's not because of inventory. Nobody woke up this morning and said, oh my gosh, inventory is so low, we better buy now. We better sell now. Oh my gosh, rates have moved 1/16 of an eighth of a 19th of a point. We better make that deal close tomorrow. It's just not how human beings think. Now, they do go through those calculations at some point, but they wake up and say, life's changing. I got a promotion, or it's time for the vacation home, or the kids are going to stay home and homeschool. We need a little more space. Life is changing, right? We're at the corner of life and change. And what they need at that moment is that person who will pop up into their life, actually has been there all along, knew it was coming before it even occurred, and said, hey, let's do this. Let's grow in that way. Let's get you the space that will make you an even happier at home schooling family. Let's get you that vacation property that will make you even prouder of your accomplishments in your career and the promotion that you have just achieved. Hey, let's connect you to one of our friends in Las Vegas, where you're going to buy that retirement home, in Florida, where you're going to buy that retirement home, and celebrate your retirement, right? Not look at it as, oh, another transaction in the customer for life equation, but look at it as a moment to be there and encourage people growing to the next chapter in their lives. When I realize that what I do in my business is really about messing with people's lives, I mean, I really do. Like, words that I can say can make a difference. Some people can ultimately take just one little thing that I might be able to contribute in 30 minutes in their day, and it can make a difference for them. It really made me recognize that I could be a catalyst for growth in the relationships that I have. Let me tell you a real quick story. So I did a gig 5 years ago in Lisbon, and it was really tons of fun for me because I don't speak Portuguese. And so there was a translator, and it was really interesting to talk and then have them translate it. And by the way, if you've never worked with a translator, telling jokes is really hard because you tell the joke, nobody laughs, and then you go, oh, I think that didn't work. And then you start your next sentence and then everybody laughs. And then you say, oh, okay, it was the translator, right? It was the funniest thing I've ever done on stage because I felt as if I was in a time warp. But anyways, it was a really cool gig. And I was really very happy to have been able to share some ideas with people. And as we were done, we were all done, and there was a dinner to go to. I was cleaning up on stage and talking to the stage crew and the director of education. And a gentleman came over to me, and he was sort of waiting politely. And he was a younger fellow. So I just, kind of figured he wanted to come over and say thank you, et cetera. And so I turned to him and I said, I don't speak Portuguese, but do you speak English? He said, oh, yes, I speak English. I said, well, that's great. He said, listen, I want to tell you something. And I said, okay. He said, today was going to be my last day. Today I was going to come in and give my notice. And I said, oh, really? He's like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 3 years. And I thought, I could really do more than I had already done by now. And I said, all right, well, is it still going to be your last day? And he said, well, the truth is, you said something today that really clicked in my head. And I said, and he said, and I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to stay in this business another year, and I'm going to try and make the best of it. Now, at that point, I was completely speechless. Why? Because I was all choked up, because I couldn't talk, because I was about to cry, because I realized at that moment that even with a complete stranger, we have the power to fill a bucket. We have the power to express our belief that 600 complete strangers in the room might take away one little thing we can do for them in that one moment that we have together. This, by the way, my friends, is why I'm so personally careful with what I post online, with what I do on social media. For every person who reacts to what you do online, how many didn't react but still read it, still saw it, still might have been impacted by the words that you said and could either ignite their growth or could in some other way, I don't know, inhibit it, if you will. So when I think about relationships, it really has, for me, revolved around these 5 areas in which I decide to be intentional. And by the way, I really want to go back to what Renee said here in the chat room, right? I wasn't doing it purposefully. Whether you were or not isn't the issue or not. I actually probably believe you had a strong intuition to use storytelling. But now that we understand what we're doing, think of how intentional we could be in our conversations. Think about how you could express one or more of these contributions in every interaction. I truly believe that's why when that lady wrote back to my newsletter and she said, I miss you, it wasn't because of the particular fact or story or item that was in the newsletter. It was that I filled one of those buckets. Now, to be totally transparent, I do ask myself, what am I writing about today? Before I pick up the phone, what does this person need from me today? Do they need a little reassurance? Do they need a greater sense of control? Should I, maybe purposefully, intentionally, as Renee puts it, make sure I express how important they are, how much they matter to me? This is not in any way inauthentic. It's not a manipulation. It's saying, hey, if they're going to give me some time, I want it to be time well spent. Let me pause there for a moment. Any questions or thoughts about how these 4+1 buckets can help you strengthen relationships, and how they actually, I think, set up the opportunity for people to hear about our professional stuff? They want to know that we're skilled, experienced, well-resourced, backed up by good peers and a great company. But I don't think they can hear those things until they feel these things first from us. So any thoughts or reactions or questions? I have a couple of other quick things I would suggest to you on how you could implement these, but I want to just pause because to me, when I learned these 5 things, it really changed a lot of my relationship management. So If anything comes up, just please drop it in the chat room. If you want to just unmute your mic, I'm happy to do that as well. So let me just give you a couple of quick techniques that will help you with being more purposeful, more intentional with these buckets. Thank you, Renee, for that. I really appreciate that. The first is this. For each one of these buckets, I like to have a go-to question. Now, by the way, it's important to think ahead, right? So again, I'm not templating this work. I'm giving myself permission to actually think before I act, think before I speak. So what would be my go-to question for importance? What is the go-to question for making sure people feel as if my relationship is happening with them? What's a go-to way in which I can learn more about what growth they want to see in their lives? And I think these scripts, when we think about them, the script really is more of an opportunity to listen than it is to learn. Here's the funny thing about scripts. Most people are taught scripts in our business, in the sales business. Most people are taught scripts as a way of leading someone to a point in which our overcoming their objection causes a reaction, right? So most scripts are actually leaders to setting us up to say something we already know. And I think that's kind of a disservice, both to us, the wonderful things that we could contribute to others, and also the time we spent with others. I like to make the purpose of my time an opportunity to hear something I don't know rather than just hear myself say something I do know. Right? Why would I spend my whole life making phone calls to simply tell people about things I already know? I'd rather have those moments with them at lunch, those moments with them in person, those moments with them to say, tell me something I don't know about you. So that's why I use a question model for the 5 buckets. I always say to myself, what do I need to ask to ensure that they feel pride, significance, control, or autonomy, certainty, and a sense of growth? And that's where I think we get so excited about our job, is that I wake up every day saying I'm about to learn something in the key areas that I can then contribute to and make a difference. But when it comes to questions, the truth is we also have to be really good listeners. I do not ask a question in anticipation of my answer. I ask a question in anticipation and hopes of their answer. And that means I have to be a really good listener. So I thought it would be fun to teach you a quick technique in how to be a really good listener. How many people have heard how important it is to be a good listener before? We've all heard that, right? But how many people have actually gone through some exercises on how to be a good listener? Like, it's not just, turn off your distractions and pay attention and write notes and all of that. Granted, those things are helpful, my friends, but there's actually a way in which you have to use your mind purposefully to be a really good listener. And by the way, if you want some fun techniques, just go Google listening techniques, improv, because improv people are really good at listening to what's going on around them and then acting from them. And I'm actually going to teach you just 2 tiny little things I learned at the Improv. I love to do the Improv. It's very fun. But I use it as a way to grow my teaching abilities. And so I'm going to teach you just maybe one of these 2 techniques. And then I will, encourage you to go check out some others. We could do some others on a future session. I would like to talk to you about, well, you know what? Why don't we put it to a fun vote? Which one would you rather learn about? And you may not even know which they are. Pay-per-click technique or Shark Week? Which one sounds more interesting to you? Go in the chat room. I'll just do a quick little informal survey. Paperclip technique or Shark Week? Which one sounds more in? All right, I thought you'd all want to do Shark Week. Yeah, so this one's kind of fun. Shark Week is a way in which we actually create continuity between our question and the answers. And continuity makes people feel like, wow, they are really paying attention to me. And here's how Shark Week goes, okay? It goes something like this. You ask a question, right? So what are you watching on TV this week? And they say, oh, it's Shark Week on TV and sharks are really scary. And then you say, yes, sharks are so scary, they make me not want to go to the beach anymore. And the other person, if they're in flow with you, will say, I know when I don't go to the beach, I can't work on my tan. And you say, I know, I look really pasty without a good tan, and I need to always work on my tan. You see what I'm doing here, right? I'm using the last part of what someone has said as the beginning of the next part of my conversation. That's why it's called Shark Week, because basically I'm trailing their conversation. And there's lots of other ways. I know that you've probably been taught this technique before, but when we do it on purpose, it doesn't sound mechanical. It doesn't sound like, what was the last thing they said? And how do I start with the last? You know, it's not as mechanical as that, but when we teach it very, very purposefully. So someone says, you know, wow, I'm watching television about sharks, and and sharks are really scary. And then you pick up on the last piece and use it for the beginning of your next piece. And how do you do it without sounding silly like that? Well, what you do is you have to, here's the key, slow down. You have to slow down. See, if you do it too quickly, you'll sound silly because you'll just parrot the last three words that they said, and they'll say, what's going on? That's weird, right? But if you slow down and say, what did they just say? And how do I pick up on that? Then it gives you an opportunity to be a little more natural with this technique. So when you say to someone, hey, it's great to connect with you, what's happening in your life? They might say something like, oh, well, the kids are home learning because school is distance learning this month. And you will pause and think about that and say, yes, I've heard a lot of people have had to, change their schedules to accommodate their kids learning from home. You see what I've done there? I haven't said, yes, distance learning, I'm not repeating the exact same words. I'll slow down and I'll reformulate it, but I'm addressing what they just said. And the magic of that, Denise and others who ask those questions, the magic of that is this. When we take the time to address what others have said, they truly feel as if what they said was important and that we're more in flow with them. We're truly listening and picking up on the conversation. Try the Shark Week technique for sure. Try the Shark Week technique. It takes practice to do. That's why we do it at the Improv. And by the way, it's going to be funny. The first few times you practice it, it's not intended to be funny. Obviously, you can have some fun with it when you do it with clients. By the way, don't tell anybody. But when you start doing this with significant others and important people in your lives, they'll suddenly say like, why is my relationship so much better, right? But don't anybody tell my wife I do this with her, right? Because the idea is I wanted to slow down and pay more attention, not to what I had to say, but what she had to say. And that truly deepened our sense of, wow, we're really communicating here, aren't we? And it's not a trick, actually, because ultimately it becomes just the way in which you approach others. That's why I repeat your questions back out of the chat room. You think, when you think back of what I've just done the last hour with you, you contribute something. I repeat it back as a way of validating it. So I like to give you some homework because then I have to run here, but this is all, I love teaching this stuff. So I could do it for hours, but I'm glad that we've spent this last hour together. Here's a little homework that you might want to try based on what we've thought about here today. Have you heard the phrase, align your intentions with your actions? You probably have. Align your intentions with your actions. Here's what I want you to think about. Think about what you're doing to build those important relationships in your business and in your life, with the others in your office, with other people in the industry, with your customers and clients, of course, and ask yourself how much they've been in sync with the 5 buckets that you've just learned. Right? Am I just showing up and talking about myself and talking about solving the problem, talking about the deal or whatever? Or am I really in alignment with that? And try to identify one thing you're doing now that might not be relationship focused, might not be filling those 4 buckets. Yeah, not really good at the esteem part, or I'm not so good at the certainty part. And then identify one thing that you can easily do. You don't have to go crazy here and find something new and way out of the box. What do you do easily? Are you a good storyteller? Do you tell jokes? Are you someone who, connects the dots between things that seem, disparate? But find some talent or some little thing that you just do naturally and say, I could use that to strengthen my ability to communicate one of those 5 things, and discuss it with someone who was on this session today, 100 people on the session today, or maybe your manager, and say, you know what, I really want to work on this aspect of it. And this is what I was thinking. And just make a little plan. How can I do that today? How can I reach out to the people who matter today and just work on that one bucket? that one bucket that they might need filled to strengthen that relationship. So anyways, I think, yep, that's the last slide there. I like to use this picture because it's a little bit of a selfie. I'm not a big selfie person, but I do like to look in the mirror and make sure I'm responsible for the relationships that I set out to grow. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. Any questions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to email me on this or to reach out to me. Thank you, someone, for using my hashtag. That shows that you have been paying a little attention to things that are important to me. Wow, that just made my day. So I really appreciate that. Good to see you all. Good luck, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.